Oh yeah, it's running this time. How you doing? My name's Lancer, this is my shop, and this is part 2 of the Milwaukee Packout battery box build. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll leave linkage up top there, you can check that out. What I have is this Packout box with two 100 amp hour lithium batteries wired in series to give me 24 volts. It's a 24 volt system. I have a 3000 watt inverter going on top, and a DC to DC converter so that I can have 12 volt output. It has all kinds of bells and whistles. It has temperature sensing, fans, lights, all kinds of charging. It's basically a phone charger on wheels, this thing. In the last video, I laid everything out. I drilled all the holes and installed all the bits. In this video, it's going to be all about the wiring. I'm going to wire it up and with any luck, get it working. We'll see. Also in the last video, where I left off was installing the lights, so that's where we'll pick it up now. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you a little later. Okay, I just want to show you what I've done here. The light, the little aluminum heat sink, and then just the inner tube rubber between the heatsink and the box itself. I think that'll be plenty. All right, I'm also going to put a light on the back side of this, and what I'm putting back there is one of these 50 watt LEDs. Now I'll put a link in the description below if you're thinking about one of these. But you can see how these edges are all kind of up. So what I did was, well, killed my phone is what I did. So I just bent down the ends. Here, focus, yep. And shaved the corners. So that way, it'll bolt right in like that. Yay! All right. It's not bad. You can see how it's set in. Perfect. Okay, as I was starting the wiring, I realized that there's a couple of things that have changed since the last video, and I should probably explain them. Number one being this relay. This is a 500 amp relay. I know it's 500 amps. It sounds crazy. I explained it. I was trying to tell the guy at work, I got a 500 amp relay for my little solar box, and he looked at me like I was insane. But look at the size of it. It's amazing. It has a 24 volt coil, so this wire here will go to one of the switches on the front of the box, and I'll be able to turn the inverter on and off via the switch. The other thing is the shunt. The shunt originally in the last video was right here. Now I thought that was a great idea, but as it turned out, there's a little plug here that sticks out just enough to keep the inverter from going back far enough to clear the plugs on this side. So it had to go. So yeah, I like this spot way better. I think it looked great down there. Plus, the negative terminal for this battery pack is literally right here. It's a nice short run. It's beautiful. The other thing is this DC to DC converter. Now it's good for 70 amps. I don't know how hot it's going to get. And I wasn't loving the fact that the battery pack was going to be right up against it. So I took this angled aluminum, I cut it to fit, and made a little wall, little heat sink wall. So I'm hoping with the fans blowing and the aluminum, I'm hoping it'll be all right. These little halo switches here they are a bit of a pain in the butt. If you've never worked with them before, I'm gonna make your day. It just makes no sense whatsoever, but yellow and blue are positive. Okay, red and green goes to positive of your draw, whatever it is. In my case, it's this little light as a test subject. And then ground is ground. Turn it on, it works. So, if you're ever wondering, there you go. Yellow and blue, green and red, and black. I think they look great. Just like that. Oh yeah, baby. All right, now that these charging posts are installed, I need to set them up so they'll actually charge a battery. You'll see I have my meter here hooked up to the output of the Victron Orion. And if I was to output 12 volts out of these charging posts, I mean, they may bring a dead battery up to close to 12 volts, but you always want your charging source to be more than the battery you're charging. So what I'm going to do is, because this Orion has an adjustable output, anywhere from 11 to 16 volts, I'm going to set these poles up to be more alternator, like 13.8 to 14.4. I know that everything in here is good up to 30 volts, so I feel comfortable bringing this up to 14.5. So that's what I'm going to do. You'll notice this extra relay in here. I had this left over from another project. It's a 120 amp split charge relay. It has a 12 volt coil, comes around to a switch on the front, and I can turn this positive pole on and off as I see fit. Necessary? I don't think so, but it's my way of making a project more complicated than it needs to be. So anyways, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jack up the voltage on this Orion and get going. There's a little potentiometer just on the front here, if I can get to it. I'll bring it down here, show you. 1117 all the way up to 16.26. But for my purposes, I am satisfied with 14.5. All right, and just like that, the interior lights are wired up and working. And I have to say, it's plenty bright in there. Those lights were a good call. I can see every detail in there. The power for the lights come straight from the battery, so that's top of the fuse down to this blade fuse holder, and that's a 3 amp fuse in there, and then to the switch. So the reason I took it straight from the battery is because if anything goes wrong, I didn't want the lights on a circuit that potentially could, for whatever reason, go out, and then I wouldn't even have lights on the inside. So bare bones as it gets, and it's nice and bright in there. All right, next. Okay, for the most part, the bigger wiring's done. I just have the positive and the negative that go to the inverter, which I'm going to wait a little bit on. I don't want extra wires flopping around in here when I'm trying to get the last little bit taken care of. I have the AC to run, and I have the fans. So I think I'm going to work on the fans right now. Okay, I got the fans all wired up and working good, as they should. This is the controller for the fans. The red side is for the inverter. The blue side is for the Victron Orion. This little thermistor here, this is the one that'll be going inside the inverter. The Victron Orion's is already potted on its front face. And the two top fans up here, they'll be cooling the inverter. I've been playing with it a little bit, and I sort of have it dialed in where I can heat this up enough with my fingers to get the fan to turn on. Should be good. And there we go. Now, one of the final DC components that I have to wire up is the PV in for the solar charging. Now, I've already kind of half run it here from the plug. I've gone to the top of the fuse block, and then I just have to run this positive wire from the bottom of the fuse block down and around, and also the negative, and they will come over here into about this area and go into the inverter right here. And then it's just going to be all about the AC. Now, I'm no expert in AC. I'm not an electrician. I know just enough to be dangerous. So, I'm going to wing it. All right, and the wiring's finally done. With the exception of these last few wires that go to the inverter, we're good to go. I did add an extra Anderson plug here at the last minute. It's a 24 volt output or input. 50 amp plug, 50 amp fuse going straight to the batteries. I thought if I wanted to add to the amp hour capacity of this thing, I could just have another 24 volt pack sitting right here and plug it in, and bigger is better. So let's put the batteries in. And these are the batteries that I chose. Now these EcoWorthies, I did get them off of Amazon. I used 2 of the 30 amp hour batteries for the suitcase power pack that I built not too long ago. I'll leave a link right there. You can check that out. And they're a great battery. If you're in Canada, these are the batteries you want to use for this build. Unfortunately, it seems like they're a Canadian-only brand, and I couldn't find them on the American Amazon site. But what I'll do is I'll leave the size of the batteries down in the description below. I'm sure you'll find something. Just be careful, because it's going to be really easy to get too high, and then the all-in-one inverter won't fit. You have to stick with these smaller lithium batteries. So let's throw them in. This is an extremely tight fit. But it's doable. And there we go. Okay, now it's all about the inverter. But before I can install the inverter, there's a couple of safety issues that I need to take care of. Number one is the bolts sticking up out of the batteries. I can't just go grab my all-metal inverter and plunk it down on top for obvious reasons. So I had to come up with an idea. And what I came up with will amaze you. Is this super high-tech piece of plywood, surgically cut and routed so the little brackets are flush mount, and it just slips in like that. Now it's not going anywhere, it's locked in really good, and you can see that the plywood is well above the bolts on all four corners. As an added measure of safety, I cut a piece of polycarbonate, and it'll just screw down right there. Now I'm as comfortable as I can be putting that inverter on top of this battery pack. I feel good. So the next thing I wanted to take care of is these bolts, or sorry, the nuts sticking out of the charging poles. I just got some conduit. This is actually a piece of flexible conduit from work, and they just snap in like that. So with that taken care of, let's grab the inverter and we'll get it wired up and installed. And if you happen to notice me voiding the warranty a third time by grinding that opening a little bigger, it was just that the 2-gauge wires were just too big to be all bunched up. You can see they're all bunched up there. And that little plastic protector was doing nothing. And I didn't feel comfortable with that opening as small as it was, so I just made it bigger. And here we are in its inaugural run. I boiled water on this inverter plate for like an hour. It got like a jungle greenhouse in there. It was so humid. But 1100 watts, 46 amps. That's pretty darn good. But then I got greedy and I plugged in a bunch of lights and a 1500 watt heater and that fan. And then I was pulling 73 amps. And then I let it run for a long time. I forgot to time it, but I drained that battery right down to 0. And then I got to check out the AC charging. All right, and that's it. I want to say I'm thoroughly impressed with the way it's running. The inverter, I highly recommend this inverter. Great. As soon as I got it working, I kicked the shit out of it with 79 amps, 1700 watts, just ran it hard until I killed the batteries. Or I didn't actually kill the batteries, but I ran, there's a setting on this battery monitor that shuts all power off when it gets to a certain level. And yeah, that was a shock because I had no idea what was going on. All I knew is I had no power to anything. I actually had to physically disconnect the battery and then connect it back, and then it was back on. Once I got that figured out, the shut off parameter, once I got that figured out, okay, no problem. Then I had to figure out the AC charging. The manual's a little bit difficult because it's not written in, it wasn't written by somebody who speaks English natively. So that was a bit of a challenge. But once I got that figured out, the AC charging on this thing works phenomenal. I dragged it into the backyard. I have a 200 watt solar, folding solar panel. I hooked that up, 6 amps all afternoon long. It was great. What else? The fans, the inverter, I have not seen the temperature above 38 degrees. And to me, that's not hot. That's not hot at all. So I got my fans dialed in so that they kick in, I think at 33 degrees, and they keep this thing under 40 degrees all day long. It'll run all day long. Yeah, no complaints whatsoever so far. So I'm going to make another video and I will run through every aspect of this box. But for now, I'm going to cut her short. And I want to thank you for watching right to the end. I appreciate it. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.